EAST-COMM workshop. The original title of this session was Mental Health and Stress Management, but a more functional title would be Loving Your Job and Maintaining Physical and Mental Health. Between them, our two speakers this afternoon have 70 years of experience in the athletic communications field. John Hartrick is the Associate Director of Athletics for Communications at Binghamton University, a member of the America East Conference. He has been at Binghamton for 31 years, being part of the transition as Binghamton moved from a Division III stronghold to Division I, where the Bearcats challenged for postseason play across a wide scope of sports. John is the 2021 University Division recipient of the Irving T. Marsh Service Bureau Award for Excellence in the Business. Pete Moore is completing his 39th year in the business. He is the Director of Athletic Communications at Syracuse University, a member of the Atlantic Coast Conference. Pete is a former Marsh Award winner and is this year's recipient of the Pete Nevins Award for Distinguished Achievement. He held leadership roles in both ECAC-SIDA, including president, and COSIDA. He is the former Sports Information Director at Ashland College, Kansas Newman College, and Ithaca College before moving to Syracuse. And you can see both of these gentlemen honored tonight as part of the award ceremony, which begins at 7 p.m. But for now, let's talk about mental health. Gentlemen, it's all yours.
Thanks, Dennis. And I'll kick off here. I appreciate being part of this panel with Pete and Dennis, who, of course, are two longtime veteran SIDs. And hopefully we can share some insight today that'll help everybody. Dennis, first off, I appreciate that Division III stronghold. That was very kind, if not perhaps inaccurate, but I really appreciate that. I'll just give a quick recap intro from me a little bit before we get into some of the things that I'd like to talk about today. I knew about this profession pretty early, probably as a teenager, 15-year-old. My dad was a soccer coach and an SID, and then ultimately a director of athletics at Buffalo State College. So spent a lot of years on that campus and in those athletics facilities growing up. Statted games as a high schooler and kind of learned from some of the great old timers at that time. And so I really kind of had a pretty good handle what this profession was all about. And oddly enough, I still decided to get into it, which might speak to my mental health over the years as well. But got my first job and my only full-time job at Binghamton coming out of grad school, which I know is extremely rare these days to stay at one place for this long a time. But I understood early on about the hours, about the pay, about the challenges. And then later on, worked through my own challenges with a blended family and just that work-life balance, which I readily admit I do not have mastered yet. So I'd like to talk about a couple of stressors, though, in our profession. And none of these are new to anybody, but hopefully maybe I can shed a couple or give a couple tips and new ideas that maybe you haven't heard yet. First off, we talk about this every year, burnout. Burnout is a real issue in our profession, unfortunately. When I hear of colleagues, especially young colleagues that come and go in this profession, and we've seen a lot of it, especially in our conference, the America East Conference in past years, it's sad. It makes me sad. It makes me worry that, you know, each person as they get into this profession has to decide, is this for me? Is the school I work at a right fit for me? But more importantly, what do I need personally to be happy and healthy? And I feel like I'm in a place now, and really have been fortunate to be in a place that I can say is the right fit for me and always has been. And so I would wish everyone that same fortune as I've had. I'm just going to hit on real quickly, maybe my sort of top 4 stressors, at least that I've had to deal with in my time in this profession. And some of it has overlapped with other things that have been talked about even on this panel, this workshop this morning. But first is obviously workload. We've all hit upon this, and I don't have a magic answer for some of this. Coach expectations is another one that I've been challenged with, which certainly overlaps with workload. Promoting teams that lose, and I actually, unfortunately, have a great deal of experience in that. And then just simply personal issues, and again, that work-life balance and maintaining your own health. So I'd like to kind of hit on those 4 topics before I turn it over to Pete. Workload. One of the things that I learned early on was to understand what the priorities were of your director of athletics or your supervisor. And what does that person who you report to, what do they value the most in terms of the content that you put out and the way that you set up your athletics communications or sports information office. So it's very important to know what those expectations are, because as we all know, there's a lot on our plate. And at times you have to be able to prioritize what you're going to devote your time to, your most time to. And that hopefully is in agreement with those above you. I'm only going to briefly mention this because I know it's been talked about a lot, including this morning. Nate, I thought, did a great job talking about the intern program, but I have built a good internship program here, and I've needed to, and that's just, that's crucial to our profession. We've worked, obviously, our campus people, our student athletes, nearby colleges, high schools. In more recent years, I've really kind of tapped into the high school market because I love the fact that those kids are around. And so, you know, during a break, which for us sometimes is 6-7 weeks, our students go home and we might play half our basketball season while they're gone. So to be able to tap into locals, high school kids, and even adults that are interested in helping out with stats and media relations activities during games has been really useful. The BOCES programs in our area also are very important to tap into for videographers. And then I've really had a great deal of success working with this international program, and I recommend programs like this. I don't know if there are a lot of them or I just got lucky with the one, but we've been able to have an intern from South Korea work in our office for about 8 straight years now. As part of a program, a nonprofit program based in Washington, D.C., Cultural Vistas. And they bring in, it's basically just sort of a co-op program. Korea West is what it's called. And they come over here and they take classes and learn their English, and then get spread out across the country in internship sites. And one of my former assistants worked there and got me into it. And we've had some incredible experiences with young people who are so talented and so excited to be in this country and learn what we do. And then if they have a sports background and a video background or writing or photography, we've tapped into that quite a bit. And obviously it's just such a rewarding experience that I've talked about it a little bit on some of the other publications that have gone out. But those kinds of things are really valuable. Those people are here and they're so excited to spend time here, and they give a whole new perspective and they can help as well. Another obvious one, though, that I think we all need reminding about is to delegate. And I know that's very hard for some of us. I worked for the great Pete Nevins as a graduate assistant, and he used to hate to delegate to me. And I had to pull his arm to get him to allow me to do anything. And so I know we all struggle with that, but you have to let a lot of it go. And obviously you do what you can to teach your assistants and maybe young coaches and interns, teach them the way you want it done, but then you got to let it go and let them do their thing, or else it'll never be helpful for you. And so understand that everyone has a different perspective that they bring to a project or a task, and your way is not the only way. And there are a lot of great things that can come out of that. You just have to put the time in up front and then let it go and let other people help. Along the same lines, don't be a perfectionist at everything. I feel like I work a lot of projects along at the same time, and some require 100%, and some I can probably do at 70%. And hopefully the finished product still looks like it's 100%. So, I mean, I think that's important as well. When you're juggling lots of things, is you just have to accept the fact that they're not all going to be done with, precisely the way you would want them to be done. One more workload tip, touch every sport every day. It used to be back when I started in 91, there were fall sports, there were winter sports and spring sports. And we even had separate schedules that we put out, day by day schedules for each of those. Well, now there's kind of no such thing as an off season. And so every day I really try to touch all the sports that I'm in charge of because you can't fall behind. And that little bit of attention also helps your relationship with the coaches as well, and keeps you in the loop for things that do come up that people forget to tell you. And then finally, just simply be organized. Allow ample lead-in time for things, whether you're dealing with coaches or alumni or colleagues. Whatever it is, you have to work in that time that lag time that they will get back to you. And that's all the more reason why I really like to move projects along, 5 or 10 of them, because you may get stalled on a project while you're waiting for a coach to get back to you with a couple quotes or an alum to finish up a Q&A, or someone else to give you a piece of information, and you can't just be bogged down and be waiting for that. So you do your tasks, you put out the requests, and then you just move a bunch of them along. So when the information does come in, then you jump back to it. So I really have kind of a fluid list of priorities every day, almost depending on what information is coming back to me. Sometimes I've put it out so far in advance, I can't even remember that I had done it. And then finally it comes back in, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to get back to that project. But in the same time, you haven't fallen behind. So really building in a cushion of time, that's just inevitable. And you would hope that people wouldn't take so long when you need something from them. And I'm always amazed, even though I shouldn't be after this long, even people going into our Hall of Fame, when I let them know the exciting news that they've been voted into our Hall of Fame, and here are the items that I need from you. So even delivering exciting news, you still have to expect this gap of time where they just simply will get busy with their lives and not be able to get back to you. So build in as much lag time as possible. All right, that's workload. And the next one leads into this demanding coaches or coach expectations. I've learned a lot about coaches in 31 years, and I'm going to try to be as diplomatic as I can, but this is our group. And so I apologize if there are any SIDs who also happen to be coaches on this call. I tease some of my good coaching friends and say that with every passing year, I like coaches less and less. They are single-minded in their focus. They believe they're right most, if not all the time. They have the best plan for everything. They want what they want when they want it from you, but if you need something from them, many times they tend to drag their feet a little bit. That's just the nature of who they are in the business that we're in. Having said all that, they are wonderful people. They can be great leaders and charismatic, and there are a lot of things that people can learn from them, and obviously they're vital to the program. So you have to have a relationship with them. I think the challenge for all of us is to remind coaches that it should be an equal relationship. We don't work for them, we work with them, and there are things that we need from them as well. So what I first start out with is to really try to learn about the priorities of the coaches that I work with, and what are their triggers. And coaches vary to a great degree. We have some coaches that believe very passionately about social media and how important that is. That's the number one thing for them. We have others that don't really care about social media, but they want the website and they want that to be thorough and detailed. And others love photography or videography. Some are hung up on stats. Some, it means so much if you just travel with their team every now and then to show that you care and you're invested in their program. Some love the feature stories, some really love the alumni connections, and some love all of it, of course. But you definitely can sort of find out with each coach what is their priority, and then you just lean toward that a little bit. And it's amazing. Some just want to, not just, but some feel it's very important to have a confidant. I used to have a basketball coach who would come in my office after games, and especially losses, and they just needed to vent, and they needed to talk, and they needed a friend. And that's important as well. And sometimes that has more value than any other task that you could do for them. At the same time, you need to educate them, obviously, about what you do and how many other sports you have to do it for. And that's the big thing, of course. We all know this. Coaches tend to think that you're only working for their program and that you can devote all your resources for them. So it's just a constant reminder of here's what else is on my plate, just so you know. Also, read the room. I mean, what I mean by this is there are going to be times that there are actual conflicts with coaches. They want something you can't deliver, or maybe they're very unhappy with something that you didn't deliver the way that they intended. There are conflicts that need to be resolved by your boss or your mutual boss or your AD, let's say. And I've had a handful of these over the years, and they're not easy, they're uncomfortable. But the reality is it's important to know sort of where you stand in those moments of conflict. By that, I mean, if you're butting heads with a prominent coach for a prominent sport, or someone who's been there a long time, who obviously wields a lot of power, you better expect that your way is not going to be the way, or the compromise is going to have to be a little more in your court than in their court. Whereas if it's a younger coach who maybe hasn't been there so long, and maybe doesn't have the ear of the AD all the time, then maybe you're going to have a little bit more of a voice when it comes to resolving those conflicts. So it's important to sort of understand, kind of where we stand, I guess. And for everyone, it's different, and for every conflict, it might be different. But you really kind of have to understand what's to gain from, the resolution of this conflict, and you just have to be careful and protect yourself and be smart about it. At the same time, show your value. Coaches need to know, there are two windows for them to evaluate you: the work that you do, and the value of our profession as a whole, but also your personal integrity. And so sometimes I find that coaches and administrators maybe will tail off in the respect that they give our profession as a whole and the value of PR and the value of communications, but hopefully they never tail off on the other piece of it, which is your own personal respect and your integrity and the kind of work that you do and the person that you are. So at minimum, you need that to be the baseline, and that'll carry you quite a ways, especially if the other half of that equation kind of struggles at times and they don't really understand our profession, let's say. And then above all, again, when it comes to dealing with coaches, be professional and be respectful. We can disagree, we can have arguments, there can be some back and forth, but you don't want to lose that professional integrity, and you don't want to say or do anything that you'll regret. You have to be smart and be a kind person, and hope that they offer the same in return. So that's that on demanding coaches. Losing teams. I'm well equipped to speak about this. I think we've had 3 winning basketball seasons in the last 20. We send teams to the NCAAs here at Binghamton about once every 5 or 7 years. So what I had to do, and again, this is not rocket science, but we celebrate success wherever it comes. If that's a cross-country runner, if that's a swimmer, a golfer, a men's tennis player, whatever it happens to be, whatever sport it is, we go to the max on our celebrations for All-Americans and conference champions. Even if it's a so-called minor sport, we work it pretty hard because, quite honestly, we need to. And those are valuable. Those people should be celebrated anyway. We all know that. But in the reality, sometimes they don't get as much treatment as some of the more prominent teams. So we jump into that. And then obviously something that we all know, especially through COVID, is, shift into non-competitive storytelling that doesn't rely on the wins. And that's been very valuable for us at Binghamton, again, out of necessity. But we've covered academics and community service and features, and we dig heavy into alumni stories. And it's helpful because I've been here 31 years. And so a lot of these alums I remember and I know and I can still keep in touch with. So I know that makes it easier. We like the photo-driven projects, then and now. And this summer, we're getting into a goofy little bracket about the most common names of athletes who ever competed at Binghamton. And we cover celebrations and anniversaries and Q&As and obviously special events and so on. So a lot of that stuff is great stuff that we all kind of had to move into that during COVID. But you can keep some of that going, especially if your teams are struggling. In the same sense, build strong relationships with the media so that they can also shift into those feature stories. There are many times that I have to talk to student media who tend to be young in their ideas about how to cover a team, and they may get a little aggressive with some negative coverage if teams are losing. And I have to kind of try to explain to them behind the scenes, listen, these are your classmates. These are people who are doing the same thing you're doing. They're 19, 20 years old. Nobody likes to lose, and sort of try to paint the picture of hey, there are, these people who are working hard, and let's try to talk about some interesting things that they're doing. And then also just a personal issue of remember the toll that losing takes on everybody. Student athletes are crushed when they lose. Coaches are downtrodden, and it has an effect on the SID as well. It can drain you if you're not careful. And so just sort of, try to have compassion when you're dealing with teams and individuals, who are struggling. Okay, my last big one is work-life balance, and I'm going to tread carefully because, as I said, I don't think I've done this well in my career, and my wife would probably wholeheartedly agree. But I want to at least talk about it because I think there are a couple strategies that have worked a little bit for me. So I'm married, I've got 6 children, and I've got a wife, and I've got 5 dogs, and I've got a niece who lives upstairs and a foster grandchild. And on any given day, I come home and there may be a few more foster dogs or cats or squirrels or other in our house. So my point is I'm used to being flexible and kind of just rolling with what's happening and embracing and getting into that investment in particular that my wife has made with our children and also our pets, quite honestly. And she rescues animals a lot, and we're both kind of into that, although she does the bulk of the work. But my point is that's a real special thing for her. And so I jump into that and embrace that as well. Other things that I've done, honestly, again, I don't know if these are things other people would want to do, but I sort of use work as my social life. I mean, let's be honest. I basically have kind of minimized my life between work and going home and being with family. So while I'm at work, I certainly enjoy socializing, and I get to play racquetball every now and then when we're non-COVID, and certainly go to lunch with colleagues and friends and share a meal and just enjoy company and camaraderie at the office, because there isn't a lot of extra time to go see a movie with a buddy or go do something else. And so I've kind of intentionally sort of reduced the options that I have, but really maximized those that I do have. And I think, for me, that's worked pretty well. A couple other obvious ones: bring your family to work. When my 3 boys were younger, they lived in my office on nights and weekends. If I could have them here, that's what I did. And so obviously the blending of your family in with your work is one way to kind of at least be able to spend more time with family. Find common passions. My wife is not a sports fan at all. I mean, probably the least sports fan person on the planet. So I've trimmed the number of sports competitions and that I watch on TV dramatically. I try to plug into things that are common passions for both of us. Whether it's binging TV shows and working out and traveling and talking about doing things with our kids and whatever it is. I really kind of leave sports at the door when I come home, other than the handful of what I deem to be the biggest game of the year that I try to convince her that that's important enough for me to watch. But I think that's important, just to get those common passions, with your family, and maybe leave work behind. But having said that, my next thing I have to acknowledge is a lot of people want to unplug from the job. I don't really do that. And here's why. When I come home and maybe we're watching TV and she might get into a book or something, I find for me, it's important and valuable to just kind of open up a notebook and sort of organize my thoughts, either from the day or for leading into the next day at work. Maybe proof some things where I couldn't get peace and quiet at the office to get through something, or have some ideas for a feature story I'm thinking about writing. I like to do those at nighttime, and just, it's a relaxed environment. And again, it's become a hobby is what it is, I guess. And so I'm sort of saying that my job is also my hobby. So for me, in a way, it's unplugging, but it's not completely leaving it behind. The other thing is just use flex time. I think hopefully we all have a lot of this, available to us, but I know that's been a godsend for me at Binghamton. Is I've had bosses that understand the volume of hours that you're putting in. And so no one has given me grief if I leave in the middle of the day and go do a couple errands or meet my wife for lunch or go to an appointment, and just do the things that need to be done away from the office during the day, knowing that again, you're getting all your tasks done anyway. And then the other final thing I'll say is just use your time wisely. I like to make a habit of this. If we have a basketball game on a Friday night, and for instance, this year with COVID, we played Friday and Saturdays. After the game Friday night, at whatever time that might be, 10 o'clock, you have that option, and I'm sure we've all been there. Do I kind of stay put and get a lot of things done, or do I head home immediately because it's been a long day? And for me, it's sort of, that answer is not simple. It really depends on what my wife is doing. If it's earlier in the day and she's holding dinner, or we had plans, or I haven't seen her for a while, then yeah, I'm going to make that decision to leave. But if she's already gone to bed, or she's out or doing something else, then I'm going to take advantage of that time and get as much done, in advance of the next day's activities as I can. And if it doesn't work that way, then I'll come in early the next day. But the point is, I kind of shift my hours in terms of getting things done to, whatever fits into her schedule the best. And luckily, we can do that pretty easily. Final thing I'll say is just learn about yourself and your coping style. I know I haven't really talked directly about mental health here, but I understand about me pretty well, and what I need, and when I need to unwind, and how I need to. And I think, how you handle stress is important to at least understand, about yourself. What do you require to be in a relaxed state, or to work through difficult situations? And it's different for everybody. The most stressful thing for me is being a Baltimore Orioles fan and a Buffalo Sabres fan. So if I can get through that, I think I'm good. So to be honest, the work stress tends to pale in comparison to the fan stress. So I always kind of put that in perspective. I know I'm rambling. Final thoughts. Don't take yourself or the job too seriously. Own your mistakes and acknowledge your shortcomings, but still defend your office. I defend our office pretty firmly when I need to, and learn to say no to people, which is so hard. Understand that you won't please everyone. I've seen student surveys at the end of the year, and the same team will have comments that say, John does a great job with us. We love what he does. He's perfect. And the next comment will be, John has no clue what he's doing. You know, we wish we had somebody else working on it. So, I mean, you're just not going to please everybody. It's the way it goes. Build hobbies that are uplifting and that do take you away from your job. I used to sing in the university choir, really enjoyed that, and play a lot of tennis and racquetball in my spare time, and like to teach and to travel. And so really kind of, if you have a few more hobbies, maybe that can pull you away from work, that's good. But also my final message is still get yourself close to the action, get to know the student athletes, and remember why you love sports, because that's why we all got into this. And that makes me relaxed and comfortable to see the competition and to learn and be inspired by these young kids, because the older I get, the more amazing these talented young people seem to be. And sometimes if I forget that, it's easy to get lost in the mess of the office, but going down to the court and watching practice and just appreciating the profession that we're in, and the fact that you can watch and write about and deal with sports for a living. It's a great thing. So again, appreciate your time. Thanks. That's the end of my presentation. I will turn it over to Pete, and then we can ask questions or answer questions at the end.
And just a reminder to the crowd, when you have questions, please type them into the Q&A box or the chat. And then when we're done with the session, we'll get to as many as we can. Peter.
Well, I want to start by thanking Dennis for putting this together. And I want to thank my friend John for agreeing to share the mic. I really admire what John has done in his career. It's really something to be proud of, to be at the same school for 31 years, because there's a lot of ups and downs in that. And now John's associated strongly with Binghamton, and they're very lucky to have him there. So again, thanks, John, for being a part of this as well. My goal in the things I'm going to talk about, my goal is to jumpstart some self-reflection and some self-assessment in each of you, and spark some questions and hopefully some dialogue, and also then provide some action steps. I'm a little disappointed I can't see you all in this presentation and see your faces. I was actually hoping that some of you would throw a flag on me if I got going too long, but if you throw a flag on me now, I'm not going to be able to see you doing it, so that's not going to work. But I'm going to talk a little more. I'm going to talk about my own situation, some personal things that I've had to deal with, in the hopes that that'll make a connection with you. And then, although I'm not trying to talk about myself, but I think my own experiences hopefully will help some of you. So the order of events I have for this talk is I'm going to start with my challenges along the way, and then go to seeking answers for those challenges. Number 3, I have drink from the keg of positive beverage. Number 4 will be your own general manager and build your team. And then number 5 will be taking action at the end. So my story kind of starts when I came to Ithaca in 1986. My first 2 or 3 weeks at Ithaca, when I was hired, I used the enthusiasm and the adrenaline you get from having a new job. And so I started working 10+ hour days with that excitement. I reorganized all the files and I was off and running without being aware of it until many years later. What I was doing was I was establishing a pace that it's impossible for one person to maintain. The message I was giving myself at the time was, I have to keep getting better. I just have to keep getting better. And it started me down the road of becoming a bit of a workaholic. As an example, when a school year would end and I would look back and kind of evaluate the job that we did in our office, my conclusion was that we had a really good year. Now, what are we going to do to raise it up a notch? I literally fed the beast. For me, balance wasn't an issue because I worked all the time. So that was my balance. And after working a full day, I would head home. I was single at the time, and I'd go with my Stouffer's lasagna dinner out of the microwave, and I'd think, okay, what should I accomplish tonight? And oftentimes the answer was, I know, I'll go back to work. And that was a product of loving what I did, and it helped build my self-confidence a little bit as well. So a few years of that pattern, and I began to notice some things that were going on with me. One was stomach and intestinal distress. Another was headaches. And for me, I would get them in the back of my head and then kind of down my neck. I didn't sleep well. I slept very inconsistently. And then I noticed I'd have periods where I did feel somewhat, I did feel a little bit of depression. And looking back at it, my identity at that time was entirely wrapped up in my work only. So it got to the point where I had to do something. I had to find some answers and try to help myself out a little bit. So seeking answers. First, the physical symptoms. I went to my doctor and talked to him about some of the things that were going on. Ended up doing a lot of tests related to my to the stomach stuff, and medically, those all came back clean bill of health. So they weren't really making sense because I was having the issue. I actually tried acupuncture and had a weird experience with acupuncture. When I did go to acupuncture, I'd fall asleep with all these needles in me. Thankfully, I didn't move too much while I was asleep. I'm not sure that acupuncture helped me that much. One thing that did help me is I went to what's called biofeedback. And biofeedback for me identified that I had a lot of muscle tension in my upper abdomen. And that's what was causing the stomach distress, because I was getting knots, in that abdominal wall of muscles. And then it also determined that I had a lot of tightness in my neck and shoulders, and that's what was causing the headaches. You have muscles that run down the back of your head that attach to your shoulder, and those were knotting up, and that was causing, a lot of discomforts. Similar to what I've heard people talk about migraines. A lot of migraines are in the front, though my situation, they were in the back. And then for the psychological symptoms that I was having, I embarked on therapy that was recommended by my primary physician. Here's the thing about therapists. Therapy. There are many great therapists. There are many therapists that aren't so good. And so I would encourage anyone who's willing to give that a shot to keep trying until you connect with somebody. It took me a couple tries, but not connecting and giving up isn't the answer. Once you do connect, you'll see the benefits. So I've tried therapy probably at different times, a handful of times over the years. And each time when I connected with somebody, those professionals were of tremendous help to me. And I'll give you a couple of examples of how they can help. One is, I learned the first time I went that I was a perfectionist. And I learned that type of thinking, that perfectionism, is really unrealistic. And it can cause a lot of self-damage. You're not helping yourself if you're a perfectionist, because you have this vision of how you should be performing that no human could attain. And so you're giving yourself sort of a false message there. The second thing that a professional, like a really good psychologist, can identify is that I was identified as having mild depression, which is not uncommon. It's also not debilitating if it's handled. And through having a good therapy and learning more about myself, and also through medication, it's been a huge help. It made a real difference. And a lot of those symptoms that I was telling you about started going away. Number 3, I put down drink from the keg of positive beverages or chug. By that, I mean, I believe in a concept of the negative voice. I believe that many of us have a voice in our heads that's telling us things that aren't true and that are typically negative. For some people, it's their self-conscious. You can name it what you want, but basically it's a negative voice. And it's really important to shut that down, to even verbalize, I'm not going to listen to you anymore. Because the negative voice at times can get loud and cause self-doubt and issues that are not good. Another phrase I would use is change the channel. If you find that the negative voice is getting loud, change the channel, go to a different station. Tell yourself, I'm not going to devote any more time to listening to the negative voice or thinking about those things. Positive affirmations actually can help, whether you write them, say them out loud. It helps silence that negative voice and brings back your confidence by telling yourself, I can do this. This isn't a big deal. I can get through this fine. For many people and for myself, prayer helps a great deal and can serve as positive affirmations. And one of the great prayers is, this is the Serenity Prayer that was on my grandmother's refrigerator when I was a kid. But I keep it posted so that I look at it, and it's brief, but it's meaningful, and it's like a positive affirmation, and makes you look at yourself more realistically and lowers the expectations, the unrealistic expectations that we have for ourselves. Limit the time you spend with people who are negative. If you're with a group of people that are whining and complaining frequently, that can't help but bring you down. That's going to drain you. Instead, find some pals that are optimistic, that are positive, that are energetic folks, and you will get energy from them, and your attitude will become more positive. A big thing is stop hammering yourself. Stop hammering yourself for mistakes. Learn to forgive yourself. No one is perfect. We're all going to stumble along the way. Give yourself a break. When you're constantly hammering yourself or thinking about all the things you're doing wrong, that's going to cause issues. That's going to drain you, hurt your self-confidence. Again, it's part of the whole negative voice. The fourth thing I have is be your own general manager and build your team. My thought there is that I believe strongly that life is not meant to be spent alone. It's not a solitary existence. And so it's important to build a team. And you start by asking yourself, who are your go-tos? Who are the people that you are comfortable speaking with candidly, and use them. Reach out to them, talk to them. You'll find great benefits. Create a circle of support and devote time to increasing the size of your circle. And as you're on this journey, or as your career develops, the circle will get bigger. That's good. Add people to the circle. You have more people that you can go to, and take advantage of that. It's no good to have a team and then not use your team. Take advantage of that. COSIDA has developed a mentorship program that's outstanding. I'm lucky to be on that committee. You get paired with someone who wants a mentor. And there are any number of available people who want to be mentors, who would be thrilled to be a part of each of your circles, including me, whether or not you're assigned through the program or otherwise. It means it's a meaningful experience to me to have someone call me and ask me whatever. I'm very anxious to do that, and I feel good when I can. And I'll give you an old school example from when I was early in my career, like many of you are. I was stuck at a really small school in Kansas I had 3 different jobs. Enrollment was about 800, and that included part-time. I was SID, we had 5 sports. I was director of college relations, and I was also assistant basketball coach. And I decided that what I really wanted to be was an SID. And I'm from Buffalo. So I applied for every SID opening east of the Mississippi for a year. And I wasn't even getting good rejection letters. I mean, it was not going well. And so after a COSIDA workshop, I took a gamble and I picked 3 legends who I'd never met. I picked 3 guys that I looked up to from the convention, just seeing how they handled themselves. So Dennis and John will recognize these names, but one was Fred Stabley Sr., who was the SID at Michigan forever. Another was Roger Valdesari, who was the SID at Notre Dame forever. And then a third gent was, his name was Bill Whitmore, and he was the SID at Rice forever. So there was no email back then, guys. There was no cell phones. And so I wrote them letters and told them about my frustration and how I was kind of worried that I wasn't advancing. I determined that this was my passion. I wasn't going anywhere. You know, all 3 of them wrote me back promptly, handwritten, personal letters. I'd never met them. And each one of them gave me really valuable advice. And just to give you one example from that, Roger Valdesari, in his letter to me, he said, you shouldn't feel bad about being a small college SID. When we hire assistants at Notre Dame, we pay particular attention to small college SIDs who apply because we know they've done everything. They've got a broader experience. That really meant a lot to me, and that got me along the path of calling on and building my circle of support and getting mentors and then using them, asking them for help. As I wrap up now so we can have some questions, I want to give you some action steps. Again, I'm just hopeful that you'll take a look and that some of these maybe will make some sense to you and you'll give them a shot and you'll find 1 or 2 of them beneficial. The first one is something that John alluded to, and that is put yourself first. You are the most important person in your life. You need to love yourself. You need to like yourself and be kind to yourself, and put yourself first. Don't be your own worst enemy. You should be your biggest cheerleader. The next thing is talk openly with your colleagues, friends, and families. Some of the best advice will come from someone who has already dealt with the situation you're in. Don't be afraid to ask about it. You'll feel so much better if they're able to help you out. I had a really enlightening experience when I went through divorce. And the Diocese of Syracuse actually, believe it or not, had separated and divorced groups where you could go. There was a moderator, a leader, and it gave people the opportunity to talk. And so I stumbled into one of those, terrified, scared to death, and very unhappy. And as I listened, someone would volunteer something, and I'd think, I'm going through that now. And the more I listen, these people are, at different points of the journey, but they're farther along than I am. I learned so much from that group that it made a tremendous difference in me getting going again and moving forward. I encourage you to get an annual physical. Very important. Don't put that off. Do it once a year. You got to get a physical. I encourage you to explore your faith, whatever that is. Pray, go to church, go to mass, commit to regular exercise. I hate it. I don't like it, but every time I do it, when I'm done, I feel better. We all know that there's a biochemistry that proves that that's good for you, and it's a good thing to do. Maintain a healthy. Another thing about exercise too, that it helps you sleep. Actually, if you're physically tired, it's going to help you sleep. So those of you that go to bed and can't go to sleep because you're thinking about so many things, and I was like that. If you exercise yourself tired, you're going to sleep better. Maintain a healthy diet. That also can't always be fun, but if you can limit fast food and sugar, it's going to make a difference. If you can go heavy on fruit and vegetables and drink as much water as you can, those are all good things. The next thing I have down is read. Read anything, read everything. John Gordon's books, I recommend. There's a book called The Four Agreements. That's really good. Another book I read, Lead for God's Sake, is tremendous. And there's a good relationship book that's old, but it's called Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. And I recommend that highly. So you put all this stuff together. They're all little things. You put them together, you're going to be so much better off. Any of you ever want to talk about any of these topics, get in touch with me. I'd be happy to. And I hope one or two of the things that John and I got to might reach out to you at some point. We want people to love their jobs and stay in the profession and be healthy doing it. So I appreciate your attention. I wish I could see your faces.
We have our first question, and it's for Pete. Can you compare the job of being a jack of all trades at Ithaca versus being the master of one, basketball, at Syracuse?
Yeah, very different. Loved them both. At Ithaca, you're trying to get media attention mostly through hometown venues, and you're doing a lot of pitching of those stories. At Ithaca, I was very close to the student athletes and the coaches, which I loved. It was much more of a community. I had a lot of support from the administration, which was great. So it was a great job, and I was there at a great time, and I loved it. I thought I'd never leave. I did leave when I had this opportunity at Syracuse, and some of the leadership at Ithaca had changed, and it wasn't quite the same for me there. But it was a completely different job. It was one or two sports, high profile. I didn't have to call in results. They're calling me. Every game's on TV. And it gave me a jump start to my career again. It really gave me a shot in the arm and got me motivated to get going again. There's a misnomer that you can't do both. You can do whatever you want. Just because you're at a small school does not rule you out for a large school. And just because you're at a small school doesn't mean you have a bad job. I had a great job at Ithaca. So don't put yourself down if you're at a small school. You're doing great things. And that's another thing I'd be happy to, if anybody ever wanted to talk about that, I'd be happy to, but you're all capable of doing both. For me, they were different. I absolutely loved and love both of them.
Well, we've got a couple of more questions, and I'd say either you or John for this one. Do you have a recommended practice or tactic for handling a situation you know will be stressful?
I'll take a shot at that one. I think, and again, it's hard because I don't think I have one universal tactic that would apply to several different conflicts. But I guess for me, it's just really about preparation. I'm not overly comfortable thinking and reacting and talking on the fly. And so if I know there's a meeting in particular that's going to be stressful, whether that be because there's some crisis management or some other issue happening with personnel, the more prepared you are, the better. I write a lot of notes for myself. I've scribbled a long page of notes from Pete's great talk here. It's important for me to be able to see it on a piece of paper and refer to it and then practice it if I need to. So for me, it's just really all about the preparation as much as possible.
The only thing I would add to that is don't go into it thinking that somebody's going to drop a bomb on you. John prepares, so he builds his confidence that way, but go into it thinking, this is fine. I'm going to take care of this. And being confident in your abilities, and don't listen to the negative voice, go into it, being confident that you can get it done, and hopefully it will be less stressful. I think it's really good to identify though that it is stressful, or to tell yourself, okay, this has the potential of being stressful, and what's the best that I deal with stress. So.
Got another one. I'm going to jump over one and then come back to a different one. Have you communicated your mental health needs to coworkers and/or supervisors? Can you give advice on how others can communicate their needs to others?
That's a really good question. For starters, a good resource for a therapist or a psychologist might be your own institution. And it might be part of your benefits package at the school, and that you don't have to pay for it. So yeah, I've certainly let a supervisor know if there was going to be something that was going to take me out of the office during normal hours. But I don't know that that's ever really come up as much of an issue. I guess if I've talked about it with people in the office, it's been more to suggest that it's something they might want to try if they're having trouble. So, but schools are really good about confidentiality, I think. And like I said, you might have resources right there that can help you out. The bottom line is you got to do what's best for yourself. And if you're even thinking that this might be something worth trying, you do it. Don't sit on it.
And that sort of answers the question that came in just before that. Does Syracuse offer any sort of mental health programming? Quote, I wish my school would offer something more for staff, unquote.
Syracuse does offer that. Syracuse does have professionals on staff that do that. I've gone to people who are in private practice, but it's covered by our medical plan for the most part. So it's a copay, and it's been worth every dollar I ever spent on it. And it was the same at Ithaca. It was a benefit and it had a copay, but it was worth it. And another, you might, if you're comfortable, you might ask around. Do you know of anybody who's good? That might help save you the trouble of finding someone that you can connect with, but you might ask around too. If someone's had good luck with somebody.
Do we have any others out there? We still have some room. Okay, here's one that was in the chat. How do you balance getting the most out of students without reinforcing unhealthy habits that might eventually lead to burnout? This is a cool industry and it can be fulfilling, but there's a fine line.
Yeah, I actually thought Nate had a real good answer to this morning on the panel. Nate from Alfred, he talked about student burnout as well, and kind of trying to stagger. Don't overwork them early in the fall because you need them for the whole year. For us, I think we really try to reinforce the whole family environment. As maybe a little hokey as that sounds. I mean, I try to make it so that the work doesn't feel like work for them. It feels like fun. They're covering a game. They're doing something cool. They're hanging out with us. They're maybe eating, getting a shirt. It's part of this atmosphere that we hope really keeps them coming back and almost makes them forget that they're kind of doing a little bit of grinding at the same time. But it is hard to still try to push them to do their best and be accurate and really contribute. But I think that is the best way, is to just sort of make it be part of a larger atmosphere here that they really enjoy being a part of, and treat them well and be so thankful that they're offering their services to us. We really try to make them feel very special.
Each year when I get to that point where you ask the question of, okay, how can we be better next year? Every year the answer is students. We're doing as much as we can. We really rely on students. And so I had a good group at Ithaca. We have a good group here. And when you get them and you know they're interested, don't be afraid to set a high bar for them. And you do that by making them feel a part of things, making them feel important, but also having expectations for them. If it doesn't work out as a good relationship, they're going to be invaluable, and they're going to help you survive because you're going to be able to hand things down to them. John's right about establishing kind of a family atmosphere too. And I try to put a student in every now and again and say, how are you doing? How's class? Are you having any issues? And approach them in a personal way like that lets them know that you care about them beyond whatever work they're doing for you in the office. You'll be rewarded. John, I'm sure you feel the same way, that it's a good feeling to see kids that you had in the office then go on to do things and come back and chat with them and stuff. It's very rewarding. They can make a big difference for you.
So I don't see, well, let's see, we got something in the chat. It was a thank you, and I want to do that on behalf of the board and the audience to thank both Pete and John for sharing the time with us, and there was a lot of good stuff in there. This is recorded, so you can always go back to it and see it again. And I'm sure that both of them would agree, if you want to talk to them about something, no matter what it is, pick up the phone and call, or if you don't want to break in with a call, send them a quick email and say, I need to talk to you about, can you find some time for me this week, and when could I call?
Please do.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I know they will start the town meeting probably in about 5 minutes. We appreciate your attendance. Have a good night.